So instead of getting, shore, why did you get 27 times?
I don't know if these
whatever. I'm going to spend 2 days in the You're learning very good. I suck.
That's dangerous over there.
So 15 years later, I'm still sucking. Skiing, I know. But that's why I say I appreciate that. I know. So where I am, I can get a lunch, I can but then it's
No. How about yourself? That's exciting.
Drops you off in your gear, and then you just go back to the car. So even if you fall, you're moving downwind, get back up, you're moving downwind, but you're not worried about losing the ground where you're supposed to be. You're walking.
How are you doing?
Back.
Yeah, oh yeah. But we were getting off the right
But so, when I go to Mexico or Hawaii or wherever,
See you.
I love the considered by we were just in Cancun, wonderful place.
No way, no way. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Okay. But you just read
All right, let's go Come on. All right, welcome back everyone, and we will get started at our 10 o'clock session here.
Morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay through the whole room? Yeah. All right. Excellent. I'll dispense with the microphone. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brendan Baylott, and I'm a product owner. I am in Elnet, Mass. I started at Great Lakes probably about 15 years ago. And I've been working variously there as a software engineer, as a technical team lead, and as a Scrum Master, and lately as a product owner. So I've kind of gone through our Agile life cycle. Prior to that, I worked as a consultant for a number of different enterprise IT shops around Southern Wisconsin, the Midwest in general. I got to see a lot of different organizations, and I lived through a couple of early Agile adoptions and saw some of the pain that organizations went through. And I think it's inspired me to come up with the guts of this talk. Right? And prior to that, and really what I guess inspired me most days, prior to that, I worked in mental health for about 10 years. I had a psychology degree and addition to a management information system teacher, I worked as a psychiatric counselor. A big part of my job was helping people reframe their reality, get back above the line versus below the line. I'll talk a little about that terminology, right? And so a big part of what I saw, what I continue to see as we lead and help people get inspired about Agile transformation, is that people tend to dig in their heels sometimes. And I think that's kind of what this talk is about helping people through that process of unclenching their fists and understanding the Agile methodologies. Because I think as I go through this, I often think back about my initial gut reaction when I heard about a lot of these Agile principles. So I'd like to give some thought as we talk about some of these principles, how you first felt. What was your initial gut reaction when you first encountered Agile? Because I think that helps us a lot when we're trying to help steward people from our organizations through Agile. And a lot of times people are having this internal dialogue, and it's helpful for us to know that, and it helps us to help them reframe their reality and think about their job in a different way. So I'm going to walk through it. I apologize in advance for the clickbait title. I came up with this topic for the Agile Badgers, Scrum Alliance chapter in Madison, and so I presented this there. But basically, it's about the top 10 things that we encounter that cause people to kind of dig in their heels. Another housekeeping thing I'm going to mention is that as I go through, I tried doing this at our Agile Badgers chapter, and it ran an hour and a half. So what I'm going to do is wait until the end for the conversation. So I'll get through it pretty quickly, and we can have a pretty good conversation, I think, surrounding some of these. So cultural challenges to IT. I saw this statistic, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Respondents to the 9th Annual State of Agile Survey cited these as the leading causes of failed Agile projects. And one of the big ones is company philosophy or culture at odds with core Agile values. And so when we talk about culture, that's a big thing. It gets a lot of airplay when we're talking about achieving success with Agile. Another is lack of support for cultural transition. And I ask myself, what do they mean by that? It is a cultural transition when a company adopts Agile, or even when a team adopts Agile, or when an individual chooses to embrace Agile. It's a change in the company's culture, but it's also a change in how that person thinks about their work. Oftentimes, it's a change in how that person thinks about themselves. And so it can be a real threat to people's identity. You've all heard the culture eats strategy for lunch, right? We all know the graphic here. People tend to adopt the culture of their company, right? When I went to the old Great Lakes and came in there, it was a different company from other companies I ever worked at. I loved it. I fit in pretty well, but I immediately, started to change how I thought about my work, how I thought about myself, how I thought about, a lot of things in my life, because it was innocuous. It was kind of by osmosis, being part of that company. The culture is not consistent across all IT companies. My consulting career, I can tell you that from company to company, different places, very different vibe, right? Different ways that people interact, different values. And so culture is something that is in a constant state of flux in companies too. I've been at a company and come back 5 years later and I didn't recognize the place. Culture is something that has to be actively managed. So companies' cultures don't just, if left unmanaged, they can go sideways, right? So company culture is something that when we do an Agile transformation, we manage. Now we can manage that through messaging, through a lot of information radiators, and a lot of yay Agile posters. But the real way that we have to manage, I think, Agile cultural transition is at the individual level, right? Talking to people where they're at, helping them to go through this personal change. That's kind of what this talk is about. So what is culture? When we talk about these things, we use that term a lot. And these are my definitions. I didn't look these up. I cooked this whole presentation from scratch, so if you disagree with something, please let's have a conversation. I think it's the values, habits, how we do our work, how we set up our processes and policies, how we structure our delivery teams. And it's a lot of it's the messaging that we give about why we're doing what we're doing. right? What's our raison d'etre as an organization, as a team? Why are we here? If you take away that structure and policy stuff from a mature Agile team, they'll tend to continue to work agilistically. Hope I'm trademark that term. I think I did. Anyway, if you add Agile structure and policies and ceremonies to a non-Agile team, they don't automatically become Agile. That's an interesting thing that I've seen in different companies over the years, is you can, put in a pretty good Agile framework, Agile structure, Agile leadership, but if you just, don't teach the principles of Agile, people won't automatically start to work that way. They'll struggle, right? Likewise, a team that's very mature and is being Agile, you can structure them, or you can take away that structure, and they'll continue to work in an Agile fashion. They may not have the daily stand-ups that are formal, but they'll just hold their own. They'll do it, just naturally. So the keys, I think, to achieving the Agile culture are really leadership, mentoring, education, and also experience, practice, time, and success. And those are all important factors, but I think one of the key things that's missing oftentimes is the human equation, right? Getting people to personally change how they're thinking about how they're doing their work, right? Internalize those Agile. And so we talk about that. We talk about this Agile mindset, doing Agile versus being Agile. I like this graphic here because it's got a couple things that I think are important. But the left side, we talk about doing Agile, the left brain, logical task, structure stuff, where we're talking about the frameworks, the different practices, the ceremonies, the structure of doing Agile. On the right, we're talking about being Agile. This is the right brain, the emotional and social parts. This is what this talk is really about, right? It's the transparency, collaboration, trust, respect for people, openness, courage, and the principles and values. So this is the thing that people really tend to struggle with. They feel okay with the structural part because that's imposed, right? We tell them you're going to start having, these stand-ups, right? But what we don't do is we don't explain very well sometimes how this is going to affect how you do your daily work, how it's going to might affect how you think about yourself, your sense of identity as a delivery person or as a leader. And so that's kind of an important part of it. Why do companies struggle with Agile? I think part of it is who we are, right? We tend to be IT delivery organizations, right? And IT tends to attract people who are methodical, detailed, intuitive, somewhat introverted. This is a lot of Myers-Briggs stuff, and as a psych guy, I'm not a huge Myers-Briggs fan, but I thought I'd throw this in there because it's like everybody in the industry. There's these 5 dominant developer personality types that we show. And J is the big one, right? And that's the, intuitive, detailed, methodical, introverted people. And as a consequence, right, we just naturally tend to like repeatable processes, unambiguous solutions, certainty of results, well-defined tasks, and last but not least, of course, documentation. We like to write things down. And in a lot of IT organizations that I worked with over the years, these were big things, right? And when we tried to sort of put it down to Agile, a lot of it went against their grain, right? Because we're not planning everything out up front. We're not coming up with a fully documented, here's what you're going to have at the end of 6 months. We don't know what this product's going to look like at the end of 6 months. We have no idea, right? People struggle with that. And these are some of the things to think about when we're trying to coach and mentor people through that process of changing maybe how they identify themselves, right? And how they think about how they do it. So there's a few other cultural challenges. This is another one that I don't know that I like so much. It's kind of up there with Myers-Briggs for me. It's the generational factors, which I think sometimes a little stereotypical, but, talk about, Gen X and millennials and those lazy mollycoddle millennials, which I don't know that that's always true. But I do find this, that a lot of current IT execs are baby boomers, and they have a certain set of cultural values, and I know, because I have some of them, More hours at your desk means you're creating more value at school, right? So if you're putting in the long hours, right, that's what they always say, get there before your boss, leave after your boss, right? It doesn't mean that you're creating value, right? And that's something that's an important departure from a lot of these institute values. Look busy even if you're not, you know. I don't know, if I'm not busy, I go home. It's just, I'm not adding value by sitting there. And I'm certainly not adding value by making people think I'm adding value, right? The tendency to value individual contributions and heroics, that's a big thing. Many of the shops I worked in succeeded often through individual heroics, these death marches, and people who would put in 80 hours a week to pull it out. It was always the same people that would come in there and rescue everybody. And there would be a lot of, attaboys, attagirls, but those organizations could not predictably and reliably reproduce that all the time. There was always the inevitable failure. So in Agile, that's an old value that people really struggle sometimes with getting rid of, especially when it's part of somebody's identity, right? Don't make waves, you'll open waves, right? So if you're having difficult conversations in your retrospective, that's not something that a lot of people are comfortable with culturally, right? Saying, things didn't go so well with sprint, and there's some individual reasons, some people maybe, they were distracted, or again, some of these tough conversations are hard to have, and it's hard to get people out of their comfort zones to have those. And then, of course, there's the whole hierarchy title position thing, right? So some junior developer starts asking big questions of their manager, and the manager's like, who are you to ask that? But in Agile, those are perfectly valid things to do. So these practices, these values sometimes collide with Agile culture. So this is another thing to be aware of when helping people to work through those barriers, those personal, deeply held beliefs, getting them beyond these visceral reactions that they often have when they first see these principles. It's another thing that I found helpful when, especially in my organization, because we have a lot of people, a lot of middle-aged, gray-haired guys, just like me, who were COBOL developers for 30 years, and they really like Agile. And one of the things that I have to point out is that, or they really like waterfall. Agile and waterfall are not yin and yang. So a lot of times when we say Agile, it's the anti-waterfall. You were waterfall, you're going to be Agile. They're not. Waterfall planning can be used within Agile culture. For example, an Agile team can do a completely pro-scripted construction project. Still add greater value, right? Where everything's got to be going first, right? In fact, there have been a lot of instances of that. I think it's a big area to frame Agile as the opposite of waterfall because it gets people below the line, right? People who are like, well, what's wrong with waterfall? I've been doing it my whole life. Well, now we're going to do Agile good, waterfall bad. They're not that, right? Agile is a different thing. It's not the anti-pattern to waterfall. Waterfall is not the anti-pattern to Agile. That's an important thing. It helps people understand that we're not throwing out your waterfall methodology. What we're doing is we're adopting a different way of thinking about how we add value. And we're doing things that work, and we're discarding things that don't add value. I think that's the difference. So I talk about above or below the line. This is a key concept to how I view Agile principles, and how I view that stuff on the right side of being Agile. So I think, as I mentioned, a lot of IT professionals can have this negative gut reaction to Agile concepts, and they become a barrier. And the gut reactions are based on these cultural beliefs. So people who are above the line, right? That's when we've got the dopamine flowing through our brains, and we feel really enthusiastic about our work, and we think our company's great, and we love our boss, and we think our scrum master is just so helpful, and our product owner is really insightful, and yada yada. And then we get below the line because something triggers us, and we feel like doom is on the horizon. We really don't like this. Maybe we should leave for the company. Problems are everywhere. We're blaming. We're feeling victimized. I think we can all relate to that. That's when we, have a little dopamine, we're low on it, so to speak. And this can happen throughout the day, right? when I worked at Psych, I worked with people who, for various reasons, had gotten themselves to a point where they were continuously below the line because of their life experiences, right? A lot of people who have worked for many years in a particular environment, when you try to change that on them, they go below the line and they stay there, right? And the key is to try to get them above the line. And we can do that by helping them understand some of the way that Agile approaches work from above the line. So when we talk about the principles, this is the main, value this over that, right? And one of the things I noticed about it is these are principles that tend to come from above the line, right? And the things that we're valuing them over are things that tend to come from below the line. I'll point out what I mean by that. So we say individuals and interactions are the processes of two goals. Working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change or following a plan. The things on the left are all proactive. Things on the right are all preventative, right? They're all, let's prevent this from happening. Let's put rails on this. Let's put guidelines on it. Let's proscript it. Let's make sure it doesn't go sideways. Let's write it all out. So, there doesn't have to be any ambiguity about it. Remember I talked about, people not liking unambiguous solutions, right? It's the old IT culture on the right. And it comes from below the line. Because what's it saying? It's saying, boy, we're worried that things aren't going to go well, right? Let's make sure that we have a good written contract, detailed requirements, give the people the tools, make sure they use them the right way, right? We're doing a lot of proscriptive things here that are coming from below the line. And I've been in a lot of organizations where when things don't work out right, punishment is meted out. And it affects the culture very negatively. It affects people, how they do their job. Maybe that punishment's not overt, maybe people aren't getting fired, right? But they're professional consequences, or they get called bosses on this. There's a post-mortem, right? Those are never fun. So the above anti-patterns, what we value less, preventative, proscriptive, and defensive. The positive patterns, what we value more, are proactive, positive, fearless practices. They're giving people control. They're coming from above the line. So what I ask oftentimes is, how did you feel when you first encountered these core principles? So I'm going to walk through these. These are my top 10, by the way. They may not be yours. They're not in any order. Again, I did the title more as clickbait to get people to come to our Scrum Alliance meeting. I thought you guys would enjoy it. So the here's one that I think really it's success to individual heroics, right? So each one of these slides is a challenge, the cultural belief, the gut reaction. Right? So the challenge is moving away from success to individual heroics, right? And the deeply held cultural belief that a lot of people in old IT organizations have is that more hours spent equals more productivity, right? And the gut reaction is that we're not going to get the work done without overtime. The same people will always step up the rescue. And usually there's the I'll lose my status. So it's going to challenge my empire or my silo if I no longer can come to the rescue. How do we get people away from that? I think one of the things that helped me, I dug in, by the way, when I first heard this. I was like, yeah, this is all pie in the sky. This isn't going to work. Not in this organization. And what I came to believe, it's a mature IT companies. I don't know if you've heard of CMMI, but mature IT companies, that's one of their key precepts. They don't achieve success through heroics, right? They have repeatable, sustainable processes, and Agile looks to do that, to value predictability over these death marches. And so I think a lot of it is helping people to understand that we're going to come up with a sustainable pace, right? And people like that. They'll buy in, I think, oftentimes if you say that we may not get there right away, but there's going to be no more 60-hour weeks, no more 80-hour weeks, because you know what? For 2 weeks after that, you're not very effective. And so helping people understand that not only is it possible, but other organizations have had success by doing it, and greater success. And they've increased their velocity and involved a lot of the team members who are on the sidelines, right? And so these team members who are the company heroes, oftentimes they're very challenged by this. But helping them to share that wealth, bring out latent talent in others. So I think one of the ways that we can help people to start to internalize this Agile sort of cultural belief and not dig in their heels as much. The second one that I find that people struggle with is incremental requirements, right? So in the old IT organizations, we needed to know all the requirements at the front of the project, right? We needed to know everything about it, what the final product was going to look like, when it was going to be done. The gut reaction that I always had was, well, if you don't know what the final product's going to look like, how can you even know where to start coding? We're going to miss a requirement. And of course, you've all seen the triangle where we narrow the focus as we go through and elaborate on the requirements, right? Part of the problem with incremental requirements is that most of these features that we designed at the beginning of the project were never used. I mean, we can all relate to that. Building these Cadillacs, and it turns out all they ever used was the shifter and the steering wheel, and they never used the radio or the power seats or what have you. Most software features are never used. They don't add value. And so I think one of the ways that I've framed this, and the way it helped me not to dig in my heels so much, was to think about that. The fact that more will be, revealed as we go. And many times, the whole project could even be canceled. And that might be the best way to add value, right? Is to just not do it. And so thinking about it that way helped me realize that yes, if we're really talking about adding value here, what we really should be doing is valuing the work not done and helping people understand that concept, right? Work that we can avoid doing that doesn't add value adds value, right? Because we're going to fill in the space left behind. Along the lines of that, of course, is minimum viable product. And this is something that I personally struggled with quite a bit. MVP, my organization always kind of built Cadillacs, and then we bejeweled them and crusted them with gold. And we were very proud of it. And we loved to anticipate the client's needs, because that was a good thing, right? The cultural belief is more is better, high quality equals more features. Right? But the gut reaction is, I need to anticipate the client's needs. If I don't do that, I'm going to look incompetent. So getting beyond this was something that was difficult, not just for me, but for a lot of the teams that I led, to say, well, we should just build sort of a bare bones thing, bring it to the clients first, let them give some feedback. And again, maybe they'll just cancel it. Maybe they'll say, yeah, now that we see the thing up on the screen, we don't really need that, It doesn't add value. So MVP was one of those things that we got comfortable with because we started to realize that if we built the requirements up incrementally and started to deliver functionality in the smaller increments and give the clients the ability to give us feedback, we came up with a way better product in the end. Instead of building the Cadillac right up front and then throwing out half the features or delivering something that never got used. Right? I can't tell you how many things we built that never got used. And they're beautiful. They were highly functioning, great applications that really did what they were supposed to do, but they didn't generate value because we didn't understand that concept. Probably, this is a big one that I suppose is kind of general, but I'm going to talk about it in kind of a specific way. So, embracing frequent change is a big challenge. In the old IT organizations that I was in, change was a bad thing. We were constantly talking about getting rid of scope creep. The clients, we were scared to even talk to them because if we did, what they were going to do. They were going to change the requirement. You'd see them in the hall, and you'd duck behind the water cooler. You knew that they had some new idea. In an IT, we're there to decrease costs. And, we don't want them to rock our appetite, right? So changing that mindset, change is bad, right? We need to push back, limit scope, discourage changes from initial requirements, or we won't get it done in time. And I think the whole idea isn't that we just embrace change, right? A good way to think about this is that we pursue change. We seek out opportunities to find changes that can add value. It's a completely different mindset, right? Because what are we doing if we avoid needed changes, right? We're delivering something that's not valuable to our clients. And so
starting to adopt that different mindset that we need to actually seek out changes and make sure that our clients have the opportunity to frequently give us those changes. Where this comes from in a big way is the fact that the IT environment in the world today has changed dramatically in the last just 10 years, right? The delivery cycle time has gotten so short. If you start a project and you get to the requirements, and 6 months later, deliver those exact requirements, you're already way behind. Requirements, competitive advantage is lost in weeks if you don't draw your design sometimes, especially in delivering software products that are set on the web. Right? You need to be able to come up and incorporate those changes in real time as you go. If you don't do that, you can't deliver a competitive product because other companies are doing that, right? They are constantly monitoring the environment, building those changes into their products as they're built. Don't actively and aggressively seek out opportunities for change. Your product won't be as good. You lose competitive advantage. I think that's where this entrepreneurial spirit comes in. Embracing change. Explaining that helped me get beyond this mindset of, oh, there's a client, I better hide. Number 5, transparency. This was a tough one for me in particular because I'm one of these guys who thought that my work is my business. It's not your business. I don't want you to see what I'm doing necessarily because God forbid I shouldn't be able to browse the internet as often as I want, right? I'll never get to take a break. That's the problem. And I'm one of these guys who I'm not very efficient if I power through things for many hours. I have to multitask. I have to switch gears. I have to work on this, then I work on this, then I take a break, work on this. And by doing that, I get a lot more done. My thinking is more fresh. So I like this. I like micromanaging how I do my work. And that's pretty difficult for me. I think a lot of this, for me, boiled down to this idea that my work isn't my business. My work is the team's business. The team succeeds or fails together, right? And maybe I don't know how to do something. Maybe one of my peers does, right? It's helpful for them to know how I'm doing on something. So information radiators, like, we're using Jira and Confluence, right? So you can see where people's tickets are at. If you're in a sprint, you can see if that ticket's been sitting there for quite a while, maybe that person's struggling, right? Maybe I can offer them a hand. Maybe I've got expertise on it, right? Maybe I'm struggling. Maybe they can offer me their expertise, right? That kind of transparency. Having those stand-ups, those retrospectives, having the difficult conversations, that's what makes a team more effective. And eventually I got more comfortable with the idea that I want the team to know what it is. It helps the team be more effective, But the initial gut reaction is hard to get over. The whole people are going to know what I'm up to, right? So this is my favorite one, documentation. Because I come from a company where we had 3-ring binders. Everyone's desk had a library of them, and nobody ever looked at them again. We kept them. It made us feel good. And we like to create documentation for a couple of reasons. One of them, as I mentioned, is cultural factors. But everything should be written down, right? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. I won't be able to remember the details. And maybe I'll go back and look at this someday. Yeah, sometimes people did, but very rarely. And this goes back to that whole thing that we're going to add value, we're going to look busy, we're going to write all these documents. The more binders you have, right, the more valuable you are. There's all sorts of weird cultural things surrounding this. So a lot of times when you start bringing Agile principles, people are like, we can't possibly do this. You have to have documentation, right? You have to write stuff down, right? People think mistakenly that there's no documentation in Agile. That's far from true. I think the North Star here for documentation in Agile is, does that documentation add value? Is it ever going to be looked at again? Who's going to look at it? Why are they going to look at it? Is it worth creating, right? And the answer is often yes. But I've got experiences where we're doing our cardboard and storyboards, and it's like, well, we can just save those. What if we're audited? I'm like, that's something you save. That's a working tool. That should be done on a corkboard with Post-it notes. Eventually, you're going to pull them down and throw them away. And maybe take a picture of it
until you get your stories mapped out, in your backlog. But those are not. You don't need to save everything. It's the whole pack rat mentality, right? Let's get rid of that stuff. Documentation can be a real problem in organizations where everything had to be written down. People feel like they have to have it documented. Kind of CYA. That's the whole above the line, below the line thing. Just because you're paperless doesn't mean that you don't have a problem with this, right? We went and switched to Confluence, right? So really easy to create documentation in Confluence. Everybody assumed because we didn't have paper that we had mastered this. Well, our Confluence is humongous. We've got, I don't know how many, tens of thousands of pages. And I bet you a third of them have only been looked at once when they were written, right? We just love to create that stuff still. And a lot of times it's just for us, and that's cool. That's okay if it's to help us with our work. But, writing opuses and really documenting these things out and never get used. That's where we start to understand the value of the work not done. Let's not waste our time creating things that are value in terms of documentation. So that's a difficult thing for people to get over emotionally. It wasn't so much for me. I didn't like documentation all that much to begin with, but it can. Tech debt. This is another big one. Staying on top of it. The cultural belief is, we'll fix it later, right? Gut reaction, of course. We don't have time right now. We won't finish in time if we fix all this stuff that doesn't work quite right. If we have to build test coverage, test cases, test-driven development, well, we're going to spend more time writing the test cases than we will writing the software, right? This is often true. Guess what? We end up spending less time overall fixing stuff all the time, right? It's a different way of thinking. So, tech debt is a difficult thing because it takes some management buy-in to say, look, refactoring is not a dirty word, right? Making sure our code is healthy, making sure it runs well.